All right, hey, we're back, and we're missing one, but that's okay. You got me and Craig, so it'll work out fine. And we were just chatting before this, and I was starting to get heated, and I figured I'd just go ahead and share it with everybody because we were talking about, these people that are having such a problem with everything. We were just watching before we came on here the video of some white woman in a gorilla mask shouting all sorts of things that I'm not going to put on here since I put this up on YouTube at a black guy and throwing eggs at him. And then some skinhead runs up on him and is saying, all kinds of other things that I'm not going
Yeah,
to say that
it's
would get
not
me
just
kicked
some
off
black
here.
guy though.
Oh,
It's not
right.
just some black guy. It's Larry fucking Elder,
Oh, yeah.
a
That's
candidate for
right.
governor.
Yeah, that's right. A candidate for governor. Ah, yeah. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's
So,
it's
yeah,
almost like being a black conservative makes you a target for an extra heap of racism in this country.
yeah, it certainly seems like it. But we were just
Oh
talking about
God,
the kind of
kill
people
one.
like this lady here that's throwing that, and I'll have a link to that
It's it's
in the
uh it's
show
kill the guy
description
who
here.
thinks differently is what it is. It's disgusting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what we were saying there before we got on here, we were talking about Afghanistan, and Craig had mentioned that maybe we should send these people over there on a trip to maybe send them on a trade for all the women and hostages they're wanting to get out. And I was just
Yeah,
saying to him,
but
well,
yeah, you mentioned that they can't get out. It's like, okay, I get it.
yeah, well, but that might be a win-win. These people, they're social justice what? Social justice warriors.
Yes.
Time to war up, warriors. Get
Now
over
it's
there in
funny how that
Afghanistan and free those women.
it's funny how the etymology of that evolved. It started off as they were keyboard warriors, then they added in the social justice bit as a common trope, so they became social justice keyboard warriors. But that was a little bit cumbersome, so the keyboard part got dropped off, and they many of them forgot they weren't on the internet, and they came to face with reality. But then they started dressing in black and marching in black bloc like a bunch of Marxist communists. Almost like they had organized somehow behind the scenes, slightly. Uh, so if they're all organized, they have their little ambush squads and so on. And if they're gonna go 100 to 1 on people, then they can send them over there where their services are badly needed.
No,
And I know that
desperately.
Russia and China are buddying up to Afghanistan right now. And while it might be sad that the only thing they find wrong with the Soviet Union is that it collapsed, maybe they can make Russia great again, but start in Afghanistan.
Well, indeed, Afghanistan was. Some say Afghanistan was the thing that caused the USSR to fall. So, I mean, what better place to start your journey in the reestablishment of communism as the global hegemonic empire, right? Why not start there? It's the fall. It's the seat of the empire's fall, is it not? So many have said. You could go ahead and
You
just
never
show them
know.
how wrong they all are and how glorious the the
I'm
people's
sure.
revolution will be.
I'm sure that they'd rather just feel smug and self-satisfied that they helped out a brown man as destitute as Hassan, and sit and watch his videos on their computer, sending him super berries.
That reminds me of something. I replied to him when he was talking some shit about how these right wingers think I shouldn't have a house, and what I said to him, because honestly in my heart I
Or he should have a
appreciate what
house.
he's done, and you know, well, his house is where he works. I mean, that's his office. So if we think
Sure,
about this
sure.
reasonably, he's really purchased himself quite an exquisite content production factory. So now, as a content production factory owner, I I just felt it obliged to ask if he would be providing his factory facilities to his comrades. He has unfortunately not replied, but I'm hoping that he will. But I mean, he's got this wonderful
Oh,
content
yeah.
production factory. He's not using the content production facilities in his content production factory at all times. So certainly he could make them available to comrades in his downtime, could he not?
Hey, that would only be requiring him to in some modest sense, live up to his own ideals, um, perish the thought that he'd ever have that kind of obligation.
Yeah.
Ah, what a fucking loser.
S-
Winner
Certainly.
in that he's got himself lots of money, succeeded very well under capitalism. Loser in that he will never recognize how that happened.
Hmm. Indeed. Indeed.
He'll
Speaking
probably
of,
end up selling a self-help book that fails miserably to ever actually help anybody.
yeah, he'll probably
Sorry,
do.
I cut
He'll
you off.
probably get around. Oh well, I mean, it's we're just a little vindicated, is all. So I wonder if I want to go into the just released WHO thing or the just released from the day before yesterday coronavirus thing. We'll go with the WHO
Throw him at
thing.
me.
So let me get you a link, and I'll drop it in the show links as well for everybody else. And
Hmm.
basically, WHO is saying hold off on the booster shots. Now, they're
Oh, fuck me.
for their reason is
It's
always
stupid. You don't
convoluted.
have to expound on that. It's stupid.
It's yeah, it's like I actually kind of agree with him on this because of what we're seeing with the vaccine efficacy waning over time and
Well, so here's the
potential
thing.
issues
I
coming
can
up.
explain this quickly. So when you go to the doctor, if you go ahead and get your titers run on any other immunity any other vaccine you've already had in the past to see if it's still effective, there is a value above which you are considered to be immune or have retained immunity. That is a lower bound. What we have right now so we know that the vaccine when you give it is going to cause a massive overshoot in the production of antibodies and the hunter T cells that are floating about. Basically, but the IgG is the important thing. There's going to be an overshoot, um, and so for lack of better phrasing here, just to keep it simple, you're going to see an overshoot in the quote immunity that is present in your body. That is going to fall off over time to some steady state value, to some lower value. That's expected of all vaccinations, period, ever. Always happens. What we do not know is what the lower bound is that is still consistent with immunity. What we have right now is a very large range of values that we know are immune, generally speaking. So what you can do is you can just keep providing boosters to keep it kind of up in that kind of general range. And this is by population statistic at this point, where you can just kind of assume people are going to be within this general broad range that we know is above some unknown lower threshold. So we don't know one, what the general value is going to be when it bottoms out and comes out to some steady state value, where it's going to hang out in the background. And two, we don't know if that general background value on average is going to be consistent with immunity or not. So again, you can just keep giving, you can stimulate the response repeatedly just to boost it by giving a booster. What I would disagree with on giving a booster at this point is that we have immune evading variants. We literally need, like, the booster was going to be the new vaccines that are being developed this year to
Yeah,
cover variants from last year.
yeah.
The
If the
booster was
boost,
not going to be a
well,
third dose
there's
or a
the
second
biggest
dose.
issue. The booster isn't anything new. It's another dose of the
Right.
same shit you've already had.
So what this means is that you'll be very, very immune against the wild type virus and the UK variant and the California variant and the New York variant and the South African variant. Um, but you will not be extra immune to the Delta variant, which is the India variant, or I guess there's another India variant. You won't be extra immune to the P2 variant out of Brazil. Immune evading variants evade immunity. Well, and it's important to note here that there's a gray area. There's a bit of There's a bit of a slide down that ramp to the point where the vaccines are functionally useless because they're too old. There is a gray area, and we're in it right now with the Delta variant. The Lambda variant is supposedly even further, basically further away from the wild type by genetic distance. And this, you can consider it kind of a genetic distance, even though it's specific mutations. You can think of it like a distance-ish like measure. It's further away from the original virus. It's too different for the antibodies to effectively neutralize the virus. And so the neutralizing antibodies are the ones that clamp on to the S1 spike protein unit, the RBD, the receptor binding domain. They're the ones that stop it from infecting a new host cell. So, and I'm telling you, it's the same shit. Like, there's never been a vaccine that has been tested 10 years before it's been put into service, ever, period. It just does not happen that way. Vaccines and the breadth of circulation of the coronavirus right now is such that, like, if you're going to get rid of this thing, you need to move faster than natural selection. And conveniently, we are humans and we can move much faster than natural selection when it comes to a virus if we put our minds behind it and we just get it done. So if you're just talking about the technology being too new, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, that technology, the modified adenovirus, that is the way to go. mRNA is just a much faster turnaround, in my opinion.
Now, I'll comment on that. I've
But
been looking, and I'm
yeah.
not seeing the same kind of reports about efficacy drops with the Janssen vax.
So the Janssen vaccine has all right. So the mRNA vaccines specifically have the receptor binding domain of the spike protein expressed by the mRNA. That is the purpose behind those vaccines is to get the body to recognize and attack just that one component. Remember, there's broadly speaking here two expressed proteins on the surface, and they both have an RBD and an NBD, a receptor binding domain and a non-binding domain, which is
I'm
everything else
pretty
but the receptor
sure I
binding
know what
domain.
you're getting at, but we're actually
So,
getting new listeners, so just go right on ahead.
okay, so there's basically about half of the proteins expressed on the surface of the coronavirus are the spike proteins. It's a trimer. And there's the S1 unit, which is what allows it to attach to its host cell and stimulate endocytosis. That's where the cell envelops the viral capsid and pulls it into the cell inside a little lysosome, and then or whatever, and then it splits up and does its thing. So if it can't attach at the receptor binding domain, the part that actually does the binding to the host cell, if it can't attach on that part of the spike protein to a host cell, then it is effectively just like junk hanging out in the blood. It's no longer a threat. But the antibodies, the tail end of the antibodies sticking out allows the hunter T cells and undifferentiated T cells and the dendritics to come along and macrophages come along and scoop it up. So that the rest of the protein is the non-binding domain. Antibodies can still be generated to recognize that and bind to that area, but they do not stop the virus from being able to attach to a host cell and stimulate endocytosis. So while it allows the virus to then be recognized if you attach an antibody to the NBD of the spike protein, it does not stop the infectious action. So it becomes a race between bumping into a white blood cell that can eat it and bumping into a host cell that can allow it to propagate again. The other roughly the other half of the proteins are not involved in attacking the host. So that also has its own RBD and NBD. So you can think of it as kind of like having four targets. It's really more like six or whatever, but four is good enough for mental picture here.
Yeah,
Half of
sure.
those targets are involved with the one protein that matters. That would be the spike proteins. And about half of the antibodies that would target that protein target the end of the protein that allows it to get into a cell. So about 1 in 4 antibodies from natural immunity are going to be the kind of antibodies that would stop the virus from being able to get into a cell, whereas the other 3 out of 4 would be able to tag the virus so that it can be picked up by a white blood cell. Now that's not to say that it's bad that that's the case, and it looks like natural immunity, the amount of S1 RBD antibodies that are produced is slightly less, but is comparable to what is induced by mRNA and the Janssen vax. So
But we
natural
are
immunity
seeing
is
much greater efficacy with that over time and with the Delta.
so the reason why this is the case, besides the antibody overshoot, and it's just it's so there's confounding factors here as well. You have to keep in mind that people who get vaccinated are also likely to be people who also avoid situations where they can get infected, except for the special people among that group that decide they're going to do everything they can to get infected after they get vaccinated. Idiots.
That's a pretty large cross section, bro.
And it is.
I mean, at least in this specific instance.
But keep in mind, who are the studies targeting for their work? I'm just saying that there are variables that are not being accounted for appropriately in my mind.
That's a
But
fair statement.
we'll see that we'll see hopefully better data come out over the long term on that. In any event, the natural immunity, so any immune function, basically, you get B cells that produce the antibodies, and every time a dendritic cell or an undifferentiated T cell will drag in a fresh corpse to present to the immune system in the lymph node. You get new hunter T cells, and then you get new B cells stimulated from that. So every time you get a presentation at the lymph node to a B cell, it will double twice. 2 of those B cells will stick around as memory cells, and 2 of them will produce antibodies about 2,000 apiece until they die. So you get about 4,000 antibodies per corpse that the white blood cells drag into the lymph node. So, and then you roughly double the you double. So for every new corpse dragged in, you get an additional B cell out of it. Or for every new spike protein dragged in from having the vaccines. So in that sense, you're going to get this kind of duplication of expressed what do we call them? So the little bits so basically the B cells, the way they work is they have little bits of kind of like the part of the antibody that will actually attach to a pathogen. They have something like that sticking out to the side. The undifferentiated
I know what you're
B
talking
cells
about, and I can't for the life of me remember what it's called.
So there's a little Y shape. There's the bit that has the teeth, and that part, 1/2 of that is sticking out the side of the B cell. So basically, the B cells, there's a wide slew of different combinations of all kinds of stuff sticking off the side of them, and part of the 2 days that is required for the T cell or dendritic cell to drag a corpse into your lymph system to get the antibodies going is finding the B cells that will recognize the pathogen being presented. But once that's there, these are kind of latent or undifferentiated, but it's really more latent B cells. And B cells can have more than one thing they express on the surface, but once you activate them with the pathogen like that, it's all that one thing. When a B cell splits, it replicates the stuff that was on the surface, and that is not a perfect process. So I've many times in the past when the show described the human immune system as kind of retarded when it comes to remembering things like the cold over more than 2 years. It kind of forgets. And one of the ways it kind of forgets is by a kind of diffusion action where the copying between B cells is not perfect. So the antibodies kind of mutate over time, but it's a shotgun approach. It's not targeted towards a specific mutation of the virus. But what this means, which kind of give you a hint at here, is that for natural immunity, where you have what we're calling 4 different targets on the same virus. You have 4 different ways that you're going to be still trying to target a mutated virus. If the part of the virus mutates that is not relevant to endocytosis, if any of the other 3 regions mutate, the mRNA vaccines are still just as effective, but natural immunity might wane a little bit. But because you have this imperfect copying and you have presentation that's close enough that still stimulates a reaction from the B cells in your lymph nodes, you'll still produce plenty of antibodies and you'll still get divisions in your B cells, which means you can get this kind of diffusion outward in the genomic space, that for the recognition with these antibodies. So the circle of, so kind of think of like your spread of your shotgun. The spread should still include the new variant in that case, as long as you're kind of co-evolving. And the ones that do get recognized, those are the B cells that proliferate because they're the ones that recognize the new pathogen. So it works like natural selection. Again, your body is selecting for the disease it has recognized, and then boosting immunity for that. So this is one of the frustrating things about like the common cold and the flu and so on. There's already like so many variants, and the common cold encompasses many families of viruses, one of which is coronavirus. So human infectious coronaviruses, human coronaviruses are typically the alpha coronaviruses. MERS and SARS are both beta coronaviruses, and the SARS-2. It's not quite clear what it's classified as. It's probably, let's just say this, supposing it wasn't made in a lab, it probably started off as a beta coronavirus. Supposing it did come through a lab, it probably started off as a beta coronavirus and then got turned into whatever the fuck it is now. But it doesn't look, it's not exactly, it doesn't exactly look like a beta coronavirus, but it's probably a beta coronavirus.
Well, I mean, considering what's just recently come out and been confirmed, we can pretty well say that it shouldn't look like a beta coronavirus anymore.
Yeah.
We can say that with some real near certainty.
So yeah, like the idea here is that the mRNA vaccines are more like a sniper shotgun. Or sorry,
sniper shotgun, you say?
Really? Yeah. No, I see. You know what you can do if you play a fun game like PlanetSide 2? You can do shotgun sniping, which pisses people off a hell of a lot, but it's great fun if you can ever pull it off. Anyway, mRNA vaccines are like a surgical precision strike in that they very well train your body to recognize a specific pathogen, the S1 RBD for the coronavirus, and boosting with that produces more antibodies against that specific configuration, so the wild type, the original virus. While it does induce additional replication of the B cells, so you get some kind of spread in your shotgun, if you will, on that one of 4 targets, because it keeps presenting the same pathogen over and over again, the same original spike protein, your cone, if you will, the spread is not going to go out very far. It's going to go out a couple mutations, and then that's it, because then those B cells that have too much of a mutation, they're no longer recognizing the stuff that's in the booster, so they're not going to get proliferated. This is the same, by the way, for the Janssen vaccine too. So, and say you were stupid and somehow found a way to continue inoculating yourself with the original virus over and over and over again. It's the same situation there too. So the advantage of the natural immunity is that there's a broader sweep there. There's 4 targets to pick from. If you're not gonna get the S1 RBD, if that mutates out of everyone's purview, then you still got 3 targets to at least slow it down. So you're going to at least recognize it. You're not going to get cytokine storm necessarily. Your immune function is going to take over, and you're going to be at least able to eat it up while your body's getting the new spike protein antibodies produced. It's still going to be better than in my opinion, is you're going to have way more ways to slow it down. It's going to be overall better immunity. Lest we forget that the whole point of taking the vaccine is to not have the original infection in the first place. So it's one of those things that I've been struggling with how to, reach somebody who is so opposed to a vaccine that they have fallen back to pointing out how much better natural immunity is. It's like that only really affects people who have already had an infection. You're already in that camp where you are stuck with having already had that in your life. At that point, yeah, it's great that you've already got the natural immunity, because now you're definitely better protected than, say, the vaccine, because, again, 4 targets instead of 1, right?
Sure. And
And you've
not only
also
that, I
got...
mean, your body's been trained against the specific thing as opposed to a chimera or, something constructed. So it's going to, intuitively, it's going to be better suited to the task.
So, but again, for those who have not had a COVID infection.
Yeah, the key thing here is you have to have had COVID, so, bear that in mind.
Right. So the point I'm going to make here is pretty straightforward and simple. Just about everything that you might complain about as being a side effect or a complication or a potential problem from the vaccine is much worse with the actual virus. It's just the way it is. Like the myocarditis issue is 4 to 15 times more common with getting the actual virus. Just off the top of my head, I thought it was worse than that, but let's take the most charitable read of that as you can. Say that there's only a 4x difference, or a 4x ratio. That still means that you are 4 times as likely to get myocarditis if you get the virus versus the vaccine. The vaccine is still better.
Well, also
again,
too.
This presumes that you're going to get this presumes that you are going to either get vaccinated or get the virus. And then we have the variants, which of course are the other issue, but still,
above and beyond that,
if you have some immunity going in, this is kind of where that gray area comes in for the immune evasion issue. If you have at least some immunity going in from a vaccine versus having no vaccine and no natural immunity from a previous infection, if you have at least some immunity from the vaccine going in, you are far less likely to get many of the major complications that come about from getting this disease. Like the myocarditis issue, down. Deaths, hospitalizations, way down. But again, the further away we go, the next variant, say Lambda isn't the end of this, and we have I think there was some new Indian variant that was coming out.
Oh, of course there is.
And I remember they had fucking Delta Plus, which is just, okay, so the Delta First Class is going to be an excellent virus, I'm sure.
Oh, better than Delta Business Class.
Right. So the further away we go from the original virus, the less effective the original immunity is going to be, vaccine or natural immunity. While the natural immunity might have a broader scope.
Now, that said, I do have to take the devil's advocate position on this.
Please do.
Because just as you've said, I mean, your body is going to mutate down the line, and there's more to work with there. So you've got a better statistical chance of being able to deal with that.
When I said, remember, there's 4 targets. 1 of 4 allows you to stop endocytosis. It's the same one that is targeted by the mRNA vaccines, and the same 1 and 2 on that protein that are targeted by the Janssen vaccine. So, if you're talking about if you're talking about having a better, kind of an overall better time with COVID, if you can call it that, having 4 targets is better than having 1. but having the one that stops the virus dead in its tracks is more important than having 3 that kind of slow it down and then 1 that doesn't work.
Fair.
If you mutate far enough out, like, so again, think of it like one of them. It's like it, I combined them like an idiot early on, but think of it like a sniper versus a shotgun, right? We have one target that's you can shoot the guy in the heart from a distance, definitely gonna get him. And then say you add a shotgun to your arsenal, and then say you ran out of sniper bullets because the S1 and RBD mutated. Then at least you got the shotgun to slow the fucker down, right? So each has its own strength and weakness. The biggest strength of the vaccines is that you don't have to get the actual virus. Kind of a big one in my book.
Now that said, I am keeping on top of the Valneva and will be keeping on top of that, and I'll keep you and anybody else informed because that one looks it's a real vaccine, like an actual real. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. There's none of that. It's an actual.
I gotta push back on this here a little bit. So, all right. So, let's just go from early technology to now, and then we'll discuss what's happening in brief. We'll try to be brief on this.
All right.
Original vaccine is a weakened virus. It's a related disease or just a weakened version of the disease. So less infectious or what have you. And say it is in the class of coronaviruses, which are retroviruses. So it injects viral RNA into your cells. That viral RNA is reverse transcribed by reverse transcriptase into mRNA. That mRNA then constructs things inside your body, and then it disintegrates inside the cell. Then it disintegrates after it gets oxidized and expires and goes away. So far, we've got viral RNA goes in, mRNA gets reverse transcribed from the viral RNA. The mRNA constructs new virus parts. Those reassemble inside the cell, destroy the cell, and this is to a point that Steve made last time. I think it was last time. It was last time or the time before. That the cells do die, generally speaking, when a virus invades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up because I know he would have if you were here.
Right. It's important. It's
because there is some shit left in your system from the mRNA vaccines.
Well, so that's the thing. Not really.
There is. It should go away on its own, but there is.
By 2 weeks. So all right. So let me just make a point very quickly here on this. And it's typically more from DNA viruses than from RNA viruses, be it as it may. But the same outcome is the case. Viral inserts into the human genome exist for a reason. Those cells did not die, they replicated. That has to be the case, otherwise that would not exist. Inside our genome, we would not have any viral inserts if the virus was not capable of providing that DNA and then our bodies didn't replicate them.
Okay, I actually have to stop you for just a quick second and ask if you've seen the most recent Kriskozoft video on the recently discovered superviruses.
Oh, yeah, the gyruses.
Yeah. Oh, that's so freaking cool. And it totally relates to exactly what we're talking about now.
Right.
And deserves its own topic, so I'm going to remind myself. But I'm going to put the link to that video in the description so that if anybody's seeing this, check it out. It's really cool, and it ties in a lot with exactly what we're talking about now.
So
and human
gyruses have been around. They've been around. We've been
probably
around
forever.
We've known about them.
As far as we know.
Known about them.
Maybe.
We've known about them for about 20 years. Known about them in a way that we've characterized.
They
them
are there and are a thing, basically.
They're gigantic.
That's about all we could say. And
they're viruses. Yeah. but these are viruses that are between the virus scale and the bacteria scale. Many of them are the size of bacteria, smallish but still bacteria size.
And they contain DNA of many and varied things, and leave DNA of many and varied things.
Well, so this is what I was talking about before. Not all viral attacks of a host cell result in apoptosis. If that was the case, then we would never have a viral insert in the DNA that is propagated along in the species. The fact remains that there are viral inserts. So the apoptosis issue, while it is a concern, it is important. there's a couple factors to this here. One, the part of the genetic material that would become an insert is the stuff that is required to be reverse transcribed in order to form the mRNA. mRNA does not become an insert. That's just not a direction that things go in the human genetic mechanisms. Like it's just, to my knowledge, that's not a way things go. mRNA goes to the ribosome, creates protein. That's it, and then it goes away. It gets oxidized and it gets destroyed. So mRNA is not stable. In fact, one of the really difficult things is that only like what 2/3 of the mRNA that gets injected is actually able to make it into a cell. They had to wrap it up into a lipid so the body would endocytose it more rapidly and more readily, as opposed to say the adenovirus vector for the Janssen vax, which uses the same mechanisms that the coronavirus would, essentially. Different receptor, fine. But it does it so anyway, so the original vaccines, live viruses, they do everything the mRNA vaccine does, but in addition to that, there's steps before the mRNA that happen. They have to attack the host cell, they have to inject their own viral RNA that has to be reverse transcribed into the mRNA, which creates the proteins that assemble the new virus. And then a viral RNA is also replicated because that complement image of the RNA is capable of going through and becoming basically DNA, getting replicated, and then the viral RNA can be assembled into the capsid. Anyway, the whole virus genome is replicated in that case, the entire genome of the virus, and whole new viruses are made. The next generation was dead viruses. The downside of a dead virus is that it cannot replicate and it cannot produce more pathogen to stimulate a strong, robust response. What that means is that in order to get the same response, you have to inject much more dead virus than if you're trying to use the weakened virus. So the dosage is much higher, and they're more expensive, and they're harder to produce because you have to scale the process up so much more. So while it's not, in principle, any worse more difficult, like as a process in general, you have to produce just that much more stuff.
Well, I haven't really looked into it. Is the Valneva a fully dead virus then, or is it just an attenuated virus? I thought it was an attenuated virus vaccine.
Well, like I said, we're kind of walking our way up to where mRNA comes in.
Fair enough. Okay.
So weakened viruses are basically just live virus, but you produce a whole lot more of it, so you don't have to worry about the replication issue. And then you just blast it with gamma rays until it's assumed to be dead. So not only is it possible that, and also you don't have to use the weakened version of it when you make the dead virus. So there's the possibility, slight as it is, because they use a lot of radiation. There's still the possibility, because you can't use too much radiation or it won't work. It still needs to resemble a virus in order to get taken up by the white blood cells and so on. There's the possibility of getting the actual disease that you're trying to avoid in the first place by getting a dead virus vaccine. Again, very slim. We're talking like one person out of an entire vaccination campaign that this is going to happen to.
Yeah, like you're looking at numbers lower than
less than one person
than the amount of people that are. Okay, actually, that's a terrible example. Okay, you're looking at lesser numbers than the 8 women that had problems because they were on a specific birth control that has a terrible side effect with Janssen vaccine.
Right. So statistically it's less than one person, but it's probably going to be like at most one person per vaccination campaign with a weakened virus, with a dead virus. The next step in technology was to have a weaker virus express via recombinant DNA, or recombinant RNA in this case, the components of the virus that you want to target, but with, again, this weaker virus that's not so deadly, expressing that. And so this is the technology behind the Janssen vax. This has actually been around since like the 80s. So it's
A
while
good way
it's quote
to understand
new,
this for basically a layman would be it makes the adenovirus kind of like
it
a
looks a little
chameleon
like it.
in its way, so that
It's
it is shaped and
imagine
like
imagine
whatever you're
like
trying to make it
imagine like a
work
wolf in
against.
sheep's clothing. Imagine a wolf in sheep's clothing, but like, it shows up. It's except it's like a dude that shows up with like a cotton ball, like like glue stick glued to one cheek, and says, "Hey, I'm the coronavirus." Bah. So, the body recognizes it and neutralizes it and so on. There isn't a significant amount of replication that's allowed to occur because it's a recognized virus that the body can tolerate. So again, most important thing for that is no cytokine storm potential for the most people. So still, it's a live virus. So people like say cancer patients, immunocompromised people, uh, it's still lethal to them. But it's still it's again old technology, and again I need to stress this point. No, it doesn't matter if it's been 10 years since the vaccine was introduced by now. When the vaccine was introduced, there was not 10 years. It was not known that there was going to be 10 years of testing. There was not a 10-year backlog of present like phase 3 trials, etc. for vaccine. Like it's just not done that way. Vaccines have a time limit before natural selection makes them obsolete. The technology certainly has a long amount of time and certainly plenty of trials behind it. But this is also true of the mRNA vaccines. So anyway, we get to around 2000. Well, so say 1990, was it 1997, 98, when coronavirus research starts up in earnest, uh, conveniently before the first SARS outbreak, which you might notice. Anyway, the coronaviruses were starting to be heavily studied by that point because it seems like a convenient target to pick out of the common cold suite. It's not as common of the common cold family of viruses when it comes to actually getting a common cold. So turns out these are some of the more moderate to severe colds that you get, typically for the coronavirus. But it's also something, human coronaviruses are plentiful enough, but they're not like everywhere because they typically get outcompeted. And you have on average about 1 to 2 years that your body remembers it before the kind of diffusion with the B cells idea we talked about earlier
Yeah.
moves too far away from the original that you got infected with, and then like the Alzheimer's patient with a bowl of candy corn, you walk up and try another one, and it still tastes like crap. There's your next common cold. So at around the turn of the millennium, mRNA vaccines were starting to get their kind of infancy off the ground. Late 2000s was when they're starting to be looked into as a cancer remedy. Through the 20 teens, they were being experimented with. Uh, Experimental treatments for cancer, experimental treatments for a couple other issues. I can't remember the specific cancers off the top of my head, but it was a handful of them, and they had success. They were able to, not necessarily beat cancer every time, but as a therapy addition, they were able to get the body to recognize and attack a weakened tumor. They were basically able to clean up margins more nicely, um,
Well,
which
shit,
is
you'd
great.
have to scrape out of somebody. Basically, the body
Well, so
recognizes
the idea
as
is that
foreign and tries to do the process itself.
like if you take out a tumor, you have a margin, which is the extra bit of tissue that's healthy that you take out just to make sure you got it all. And the size of that margin is correlated with a statistical probability of basically having detritus float off into the bloodstream. So cancer cells that can make a new tumor escaping. And the closer your margins are, the more likely it is you don't get it all. And the way these mRNA vaccines come in as a combination therapy is using chemo, laser, or surgery, however you wish to get rid of the tumors, the mRNA can help get rid of the lone cells metastasizing. Uh, so that's huge. It just turns out that the technology is simpler to introduce for a pathogen the body is supposed to recognize as bad. It turns out that it's really hard to figure out what makes a cancer cell different from a regular cell on the outside. So you have to plug in whatever that difference is for the mRNA to do its job normally if you're doing it as a cancer treatment. But since that's hard, viruses are very easy, and this was one of those conveniences that came about just again coincidence here that coronavirus research had matured to the place that it had by last year, and that mRNA research had matured to the point that it had. Because viruses are easier, because they are that much different from the rest of your cells, you don't have to do as much work. You just have to know what you need the mRNA to look like. What is the genes you need to code in. So this is where things become drastically different from a weakened virus, a live virus, or a recombinant virus. mRNA vaccines do not require the genome of the entire virus to ever be involved, period. No entire viral genomes are involved with the mRNA vaccines, period. It's just the little bit that's required to get your body to recognize the virus, that one protein on the outside. So the thing that makes it different from the protein that's on the actual virus is that the trimer has a bit of tension on the bottom of it where it sticks into the surface of the virus. And so if you don't have the capsid membrane there providing the surface tension to hold the base together, it'll disintegrate, it'll fly apart. So they basically had to come up with a little raft that sticks the very butt end of it together, which is also, by the way, basically the reason why the non-binding domain is not recognized from the mRNA vaccines. The non-binding area is just too different because of that little raft at the very bottom of it. So this should tell you how things don't need to be a whole lot different to screw up the antibodies that would come along and recognize that specific part of the protein. So the main advantage of the mRNA is that the mRNA will go in, and every time the mRNA contacts the ribosome, it'll make a new, the S1 RBD protein for recognition outside the cell. And then there's a chance that the mRNA can hang out long enough to hit another ribosome and then produce another spike protein again before it gets oxidized and deformed. Basically, the ends of the mRNA are very, very, very vulnerable to attack just by oxidation. And if it ever gets misconfigured, if it ever has one reach, so you know how DNA there's the complement on either side. They stick together like uneven teeth, right?
Yeah.
So there's always the chance that the mRNA can fold back on itself and contact and get stuck. And that there are mechanisms, there are enzymes that will undo that for mRNA. But if they don't arrive within a certain amount of time, mRNA that's kind of misshapen like that can also be recognized and sent into a vacuole to be lysed. It'll end up in a lysosome at some point, either after it's been oxidized to the point where it's no longer able to attach to a ribosome with a start codon, or when it gets misfolded like that and turns into basically a little rat's nest tangle. So the mRNA doesn't last very long. If you're just outside of a cell, if you just had it in a vial, if you put it out on the table at room temperature, it's only good for a few hours. After that, it's too much of it's damaged just by thermal excitation, and this is inside the lipid encapsulation that is injected. If it wasn't inside that lipid suspension, it would be gone. Like all of it would be gone in about an hour, or less. So
Which
inside
also
your cell,
explains the necessary storage for that, because it
right?
being so much colder than anything else.
Exactly. And so the another thing to note there, the people who just got a saline injection by accident, it truly was an accident, and the reason, except for that one bitch in Germany who should be in prison for the rest of her life. I can't believe they did that. Anyway, so the way it works is you pull out the sample, it's already inside the vial, and what you're supposed to do is inject saline to dilute it, and then shake it around, and then once it's ready to go, you have like was it 5 doses per vial?
I don't know the
Um,
exact amount, but I know exactly
so,
what you're
but
talking about.
basically, you put in the saline to top it up, you shake it up a bit, and then there you go. So what happens is so what happens if you confuse the two vials and you only pull from the saline vial instead of pulling from the vial that the saline was supposed to go into? You only give someone saline, you completely fuck up the vaccination effort. That's what happens. Um,
Oh, sure, yeah.
so anyway, the point I was making there with the evolution of the vaccine technology is that like there is people say it's too new. Fine, I totally understand it. It's definitely new in terms of deployment. Absolutely,
And I
the
mean, there are
technology has
some
been tested.
arguments regarding the
It's
creepiness factor, which there
sure
is a high creepiness factor.
but again, if you give someone an attenuated virus or you give someone a recombinant virus, you are literally injecting viral DNA into their cells, which literally becomes mRNA, and not just mRNA, mRNA for the entire viral genome, not just the part that matters. And I know that for the recombinant virus, it's not the entire original virus genome, but it's still the entire genome of an active virus. The mRNA vaccine, the principal advantage here is that you can give it to somebody who is immunocompromised and it will not kill them. There isn't
Well,
a chance
shouldn't.
that it will kill them. Well, absent other complications, sure, but just the fact that they're immunocompromised does not select them out of
I
being
mean,
able to
just
get vaccinated.
but for what you're saying there, for basic nature of how it is, presuming everything works as it's supposed to, and nobody's doing any
Yeah,
fuckery, then yeah,
sure.
yeah, that's exactly how it should function.
I mean, for the creepiness factor here, I mean, let's look at the Janssen vaccine, or let's look at any, say, attenuated virus vaccines. You're literally injecting a fucking vaccine, like, sorry, a fucking virus into yourself. I mean, if I could see how 100 years ago that would look every bit as creepy as the mRNA vaccines look today.
Well, I don't think that's where
And
people
it's and
draw a
the
lot of their
mRNA vaccines
creepiness
are only a
from
little
it,
piece of
though.
it.
If I'm being
Well, still,
entirely
think it
honest.
think of it like you're the it's the point here is that I get that people are weirded out by it and they have every right to be weirded out and they should have the option to get the same advantages that everyone else is getting for a vaccine, but in a way that is going to make them less weirded out. There should be an option. There should absolutely be an option. And of course, vaccination on its own, that should all be always voluntary. Even if the goal is herd immunity, and it always has been, don't let anybody else tell you differently. And especially now that they fucked it up for the first round,
Oh,
because the
royally.
Delta virus, the Delta variant is the colossal fuck up for herd immunity. Like if circulating volume of virus was lower, we would not be in this position today. So this is the thing. Like measles has an R naught. So the average number of people that an infected person will infect is R0, the basic reproduction number. The R0 for coronavirus, when it was first spreading around the world, was estimated between was it like 5 and 8.
Yeah, I had heard
And
6.
then after we did all the mitigation measures, it was down between 2 and 4. That's pretty common for like the common cold and flu. But the Delta variant spreads more readily, and it's R naught with mitigation measures is slightly higher in estimation, so between 6 and 9, than the original virus was without mitigation measures. So it's very, very contagious. But again, measles has an R naught of 18. Extremely contagious. The reason why measles does not mutate the way that coronavirus is, the COVID, whatever, SARS-2 is mutating right now, is because the circulating volume, the total number of viruses out there is so low that it doesn't have a chance for natural selection to work. There's a threshold beyond which, whatever the value is, it's irrelevant. It's just the fact that it exists matters. There's a threshold beyond which you have too many individual viruses circulating out there replicating. And once that, if a measles mutation happens, which is bad enough that we need to send out new vaccines, it will be solved very quickly because we are that much faster than natural selection when we've tamped it down like that. So we can do that. It's going to be frustrating because it's going to probably take a couple more years of this nonsense. It'd be nice if the politicians figured out that they're not fucking required for it.
Yeah, they're actually kind of actively making it all worse.
Exactly. They are worse than useless. Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I was actually just commenting on that with one of my coworkers today. Like this whole thing, if it had been handled if the federal government disappeared tomorrow, or if the federal government disappeared on January 6th, there was just no more federal government of any type, and everything was just down to like unit commanders and the states. I'm gonna say that we would be in a better place today than we are right now.
Well, I'll say this: had politicians that have zero experience in medicine just shut the fuck up and let the doctors and epidemiologists take care of things early on, we would not have had so many people show up in the country and spread the virus the way they did. Imagine if Trump was president when the Ebola outbreak happened in Africa and they brought those 3 people back over here. Imagine the kind of gigantic pain in the ass his opposition would have been. Imagine the kind of spread of Ebola we would have had in the U.S. Go down to Chinatown. Go have fun.
Yeah, that's a very real possibility. We are dealing with some monumentally stupid and/or evil people.
So without treatment, without any help, Ebola has a mortality rate, not in IFR, not a CFR, an MR, of 70 to 90%.
Yeah, it's gonna probably take you down. It's one of those deals.
With treatment, that goes down as low as 30%. That means a third of people still die with treatment. Imagine if we had. I think that might actually be a
little bit higher now than it was at the time of the outbreak, but still, the mortality rate's horrifyingly high, and it's one of those you're probably going to die.
We would have had. Imagine if we had allowed that to show up in the United States the way we allowed SARS-2. You'll notice we didn't allow SARS to show up in the United States like that, or MERS, but we did with SARS-2. Why? Because fuck Trump.
Yeah, that's true.
So, it is disturbing on a whole different hyperpartisanship has allowed us to put on blinders like that, and this again, the party of trust the science that can't fucking read a paper if the entire Democrat Party depended on reading a scientific paper competently, couldn't happen. You can say the same for the vast majority of the Republican Party too. But at least, they kind of accidentally had the right message early on, which was don't let them back in. Quarantine them.
Yeah. You'd think just some... you would think the most basic things wouldn't be so incredibly
And the previous admin
fought.
so
It's
fucked up the FDA and the CDC. The CDC got caught with its pants down, and it wasn't even following its own protocol, which is to quarantine for at least twice the known incubation period. And then they were out of the blue. They're just like, yeah, but 7 days because it's a coronavirus. Well, no, it's a novel coronavirus, which is the novel part's really important there.
yeah,
It's
kind
not a
of.
human coronavirus. It's not an alpha coronavirus or a human coronavirus, which is a subset of the
It's
alpha
brand
coronavirus.
fucking
It's
new, people.
brand fucking new and looks like a beta coronavirus, which should have lit off warning bells everywhere, like from SARS and MERS. So it was such a top down leadership and authoritative, like the authoritative sources have been so bad at disseminating good information. Treating people with valid questions about what you're asking them to put in their body or what you're asking them to wear around for their safety. People who come to you with valid questions about that shouldn't be told that they have some sort of moral failing for asking you.
And
And
they
the
also
fact that
shouldn't
that
be
was the way
treated
they were treated,
like children, even.
right? It's the fact that that's the way people have been treated. The anti-vaxxers are typically very far left or very far right, and they exist at the ass end of the horseshoe. And the way that people have been treated, the way
There's
people
a
have been
number in the
treated,
middle anymore too, that have grown
well,
just tired of this shit.
the way people have been treated has they have been driven to the edges. And not the center has it's the polarization has been such that the truth of the matter is obscured entirely in political rhetoric, and then people get surprised when it flips on them. You have people talking about the Trump vaccine, and then suddenly, oh, get the vaccine. Why? Because they needed to make it look like the vaccine was bad while Trump was in office.
Oh yeah, I still
And
push
now
that shit on
suddenly,
people. Which, by the way, I do recommend to anybody that's going to catch this. If you get the opportunity, tell people to make sure you got your Trump vax, right? You got the Trump vax.
right? It's so like so on a serious note on that. Like, here's the other thing. While I would highly recommend most people as a group would go get vaccinated for the herd immunity aspect of things, for the individual, I wouldn't tell someone, unless I knew them, knew their medical history, and they were probably related to me or a friend I've known for 20 odd years. I wouldn't tell someone, go get the vaccine. I'd tell them, go talk to your doctor and see if you're able to get the vaccine. See if he says it's a good idea or not. It's then you have these people pushing the message that if you don't get vaccinated, somehow you're an immoral person. Jimmy Kim. This is a Jimmy Kimmel bit just now here. I didn't realize exactly how much of a sacred cow that fucker was still.
Yeah, we were actually talking about this beforehand. Do please explain.
Right.
I mean, it's.
I said
go for this.
Slightest
This
pushback.
this is magical. Just please.
I gave the slightest pushback. Jimmy Kimmel is sitting there literally wishing that people who go into the ER or the ED, so the emergency department, he's wishing that people who are unvaccinated that go there for treatment, and it was non-specific, by the way, except his first joke was about eating horse paste, but forgiving that for what it is, and he's not the only one that's espousing this sentiment here. He's basically saying he doesn't want unvaccinated people treated at hospitals. He thinks that you shouldn't be allowed to get that privilege that your tax dollars go to every fucking year. It's let alone the fact that it's by a Hippocratic oath and by law, you're not allowed to discriminate on a medical history basis like that unless it has something to do with triage. In which case, it probably would bump you further up the list if you're unvaccinated. There are people out there who literally cannot be vaccinated, and this is, and I talked to some of them on Twitter. They're getting bombarded by this bullshit rhetoric that somehow they're immoral for not getting vaccinated. Motherfucker, if they got vaccinated, they'd probably die. Like they're getting wished death upon either way. Get vaccinated, or you should go, or you shouldn't be allowed to get treatment.
Yeah, it's
That's
legitimately pretty disgusting the way some of these people are being treated.
that's cake or
Have
death,
no
and we're at a
hand in
cake.
this.
Yeah, and I get that a lot of times people are just talking about people who choose not to get vaccinated. And, like, yeah, fine, whatever. Be a prick on your own time and so on. But like, you're not specifying any of that. And just, I put out a message. My message was Jimmy Kimmel should hope that he never gets the worst of the treatment he wishes upon others. Shame on him. I thought that was pretty benign. And then I got blasted the entirety of fucking today.
Oh yeah, no, I remember catching it
This is not
earlier.
something.
I went to work, and you're still catching shit over that when we started, right?
Like, and not that I'm complaining too much because my notifications on Twitter are always a dumpster fire, but like, it's just retard after retard after retard jumping in. And the funny thing, I'm pretty pro-vaccine. I think it's probably come off that that's the way I am on the show here.
Yeah, if you hadn't gathered.
But
Somehow.
People come in to try to tell me after I say that it's politicized, they try to tell me that the vaccine is not politicized, and B, that I'm an anti-vaxxer because I say Jimmy Kimmel's an asshole. Where would they get the assumption to cross that gap there if it was not politicized? And then also I get told about the GOP, I get told about Trump, I get told about fucking horse paste. Like, just, I said that unvaccinated people should be treated the way that they're supposed to be treated at a hospital, which is humanely and according to triage. And the triage, people usually think of it as when things get bad, you're just picking the survivors you can get at the top of the list. Triage is always active, but it just turns out that most of the time there's always a slot open for people to get put in.
Yeah,
but
not a lot of triage that needs to be done when you've got an empty ER. So,
right,
just bear that in mind.
So triage is always the thing that's happening, and that's part of the reason why you might show up with like a broken arm. But if there was there was a series of really bad car accidents and people are bleeding out, you're going to be seen after them. So that triage is always active, and it's a dynamic list. But your Politirati card, your papers please, should never have an impact on that. It's literally fucking illegal for that to be the case. If it's basically your political view that's getting you bumped up or down the list. And the way that they're pushing this is very political. It's disgusting. It shouldn't be a political issue.
It's blatant and bold-faced too, which is kind of the next.
It's level. It's a personal healthcare decision. It's a medical decision, and especially for these assholes that are up in arms about Roe v. Wade in Texas. Roe v. Wade covers vaccination too, dipshits. It's between you and your doctor. There should never be a state involved in that. When it comes to a private business, it's your choice whether or not you want to go work there in the first place. That's the reason why it's still okay for them to ask that everybody get vaccinated. They can't ask specific people to get vaccinated. And on top of all this, you still got religious exemption that has to be respected. It's definitely an issue that needs to be considered when you're issuing a mandate like this.
Yeah, that's
it's
yet another issue to make
like
note of.
The blatant, the most consistent thing you will find with political extremists. I would say leftists, but that's largely because there's more of them that fit the category. The most consistent thing about political extremists is that they're completely inconsistent with their standards. If they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any.
Oh, not even a first one.
So like it's ridiculous the extreme that people are taking things, and nobody's like hardly any. I got a couple people to talk. I break out conversation and avoid report brigading by quoting people, because most of the people that follow me aren't going to like jump in on a lot of this. So there was one person that got piled on today, and they fucking should have. The person who, let me quote them, said, "The unvaccinated should be in concentration camps like lepers." Which is a perfect time for Steve to join us.
Well.
Yeah, you got 10 minutes. You got 10 minutes to enjoy that one.
I completely missed what the fuck was going on.
I I went ahead and gave a milk toast criticism of Jimmy Kimmel, the giant cunt, earlier today, and one of those threads more or less ended with this phrase here: "The unvaccinated should be in concentration camps like lepers."
Hmm. You know, you know why this shit is happening again? Like, we look back and we talk about, Nazi Germany. The reason this shit is happening is because we spent a shitload of time telling people the simplistic narrative that the Nazis were just bad people, rather than they were normal people who did bad things. And this is why they did those things. And this is how we got to this, the death camps. And that's the more important lesson. And the reality is that if you actually start going along with how we're talking in society, what we're doing, this is how we got to, you know,
Yeah.
gassing people
Well,
in chambers and stuff like that. Like,
somebody
this is
like I
not
was
a
trying to
very
tell someone
far
earlier.
trip away from the road. It started with a public health crisis and social undesirables, and we should isolate them from the rest of society and the whole bit. And ignoring that part of history, ignoring the build up to the catastrophic events is precisely why this will continue to happen again, because we didn't learn from our mistakes the first time.
Yeah, there's somebody
Yeah.
that said something about being doomed to commit your mistakes if you forget them. But
And,
who
I mean, I was
who am I to
even
say?
someone even asked earlier, like, how are they dehumanizing people with the way they're talking? It's like, do you not see your own fucking words?
Well,
Like,
and that's
it
the
was
thing is the
blatant.
left is so key to sit there and talk about how many, how they want to protect everything. And we've always sat there and kind of mocked the left from the perspective that they come out and they say, oh, we believe in it was it diversity, and then it's everything except diversity of thought. In this case, they are literally intent on calling everyone a goddamn Nazi for years and years and years, and yet they're the ones grabbing the bull by the horns and saying, hey, let's go start putting people in camps,
Yeah,
right? Like, this is a process. It is
Well,
a
like,
process. We are following
even
that
a guy who
process,
was
and
in
it
a
is the
goddamn
same
camp,
process that Nazi Germany went through.
even a guy who was in a fucking camp, George Takai, person who was actually literally in a Japanese internment camp, talking about putting people in camps. Like,
Yep, and that is
like,
all
holy
because
fucking shit.
we decided to. We do the same thing with the Civil War. We did the same thing with all of these like atrocities. We just and this was one of the things that we've talked about historically on the show. This was
Sure.
what psychology went to go investigate. How is it that you get your friggin' mom and pop and child sitting around the dinner table, sitting there and being okay with gassing people in camps? It was a compelling question back in the
Well, you
40s
look
and
at
the
the
50s.
pictures. Look at the
Well, I
pictures of the
mean,
Nazis at Dachau, at Auschwitz, etc. Look at the pictures of these people. The officers, they're out having picnics. They have running, playing children. They look fairly normal, and
yep,
right behind them is a death camp.
right.
People are being
And
murdered right behind them, and they all have, like, it's just a normal day.
Right. And this is the thing is we turned around and we decided that these people are evil, which there's some people that are evil. The problem is that it's not that most people are evil, it's that most people are riddled with fear and easily controlled by those who want to abuse our emotions against us. And this is what the psychological findings were, is that we can influence people and make them do terrible things, and even we can even make them okay with doing terrible things if we control the situation in the right manner. And by the way, biological threats is one of the principal ways the Nazis managed to convince the Germans to round everybody up and throw them in a fucking camp. This is literally what they did.
Yeah. Well, so example from this dumbass who I believe has me blocked, so I guess just because I have the tab open, then I can still see it. Blah, blah, blah. There are people doing everything in their power to protect themselves, their families, and public from COVID. When they die, suffer for carelessness of others. It's offending. Who gives a shit? No one thinks hospitals prioritized, but expressing that frustration is not dehumanizing, it's human. And then, oh, god damn it, it was. Hold on a second. Let me just see if I can. Nope, I'm not be able to do that. I will have to open this in an incognito window. Blah, blah, blah,
too
quote.
late.
Oh, god damn it. I can't open it.
I got you,
Anyway,
Block.
so
You done pissed them
yes.
off.
Yeah, oh darn, I'm missing out on so much.
Oh no.
So,
That's
but
all
you know,
right.
the point here, as I was saying, is it is very human to do evil, horrible things. You can't, you know, you can't excuse the fact that dehumanizing people is human and then go, yeah, therefore it's acceptable. It's like
Yep.
you're,
Well,
it,
it goes more than that. You can't come in and come in with a narrative that people are inherently good or evil. People are neither good nor evil. Most of us, you know, if you go
right.
through the D&D chaotic to lawful and good to evil, most of us hang out around true neutral. And the reality is that we can be influenced one way or the other. That doesn't
But
mean that we don't have
there are a
a
select few people in history that are that true, like chaotic evil or just plain evil. There are a
yes.
select few people in history that are like that. That once they fully understand the horror of what's going on, will then choose to continue with passion instead of
Right,
with fear.
right. And
And that's there's a handful of those people, and they end up controlling whole fucking armies for whatever
I
reason.
mean, the upside is I have seen what seems to be a change in the zeitgeist. There seems to be a whole lot of people standing up against the vaccine mandates. There seems to be a whole lot of people sitting there and starting to speak out against this shit. That's not to say everyone everywhere all the time, but the reality is that there are, you know, you look at like Florida and Texas, and they are actually on a
Right.
legislative effort blocking these efforts, right? Now, that means that this will not, you know, we will not go quietly into the night and march down this path wholesale. That it
Like
is good that
here's the
people are
thing is
saying, "No,
like
it's
we
still
we pretty much figured out by now that like eventually the way the vaccines are going to end up working is it's going to be effectively a childhood school vaccination. You know, it's going to be one of those things that your kid gets vaccinated and it's just another line item on the form. Fine. Like that eventually that's where things are going to get to and that's the way it'll be. But like if it's like you can't the thing I was just going over here is
not."
like you can't even wish that these assholes don't get like terrible treatment without somebody chiming in that everybody, you know, just immediately assuming the worst things about you that they can imagine, which their
Yep.
imaginations are fairly fucking limited.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
And then just like saying, "Oh, you're anti-vax," etc. It's like just I said I
on
don't want him to
on
be treated like shit. I
on the
hope that
other
he
hand,
never gets
you know,
treated
when
like
you
shit.
get bright shining light, the upside is the vaccines are failing in a spectacular fashion. Right now, the numbers are coming out, and we are seeing significant quantities of vaccinated people get hospitalized. It's not, you know, it's not this clear cut. Oh, it's a plague amongst the unvaccinated. It's happening to vaccinated people. We're seeing the
Yeah,
efficacy
because
numbers.
we fucked up
Pfizer
the herd immunity the first go around.
to go with the hey, you know, not only do you need your shot every 5 months, but you also need your 2 pills a day to keep COVID away,
Oh
right?
no, so
Like they're
here's
doing.
I need to go ahead and get that off my chest real quick
Yeah,
here
go for it. I
before
actually know
before I
exactly
jump
what's up
out.
with these. But yeah.
I'm so pissed about this. So all right. So I'm not like an ivermectin true believer here, but let's just say that I'm seeing good things come out of the RCTs that I have read.
I have seen good things, but I haven't seen amazing
So
things.
I've previously said that ivermectin would not immediately seem to me to be a good antiviral because it is largely just used it's an antiparasitic
Yep,
used against worms, which you know
yep,
it's happens in humans. Nobel Prize in 2015 for ivermectin in
yep.
humans. So not an unknown medicine in the medical community, but certainly fucking new to CNN. Um, oh, and that reminds me. Please, for love of God, Joe Rogan, sue CNN for saying you were taking a horse dewormer.
Oh man, he's talked
And
about it.
Fuck those people.
I hope that he does. Oh
But like,
please do.
I
it's a
entirely agree.
it's a protease inhibitor.
Yep,
And what is the Pfizer drug that's coming out going to be?
a protein inhibitor.
A
Yeah,
protease inhibitor. So what could you
it's
do
it's
instead of taking
same.
a fucking Pfizer medicine?
But
Take another protease inhibitor.
you know what the big difference
Fucking
is
insane.
between ivermectin and the Pfizer drugs?
Patents.
Dollar signs, buddy. Dollar
Close
signs.
enough.
One of them
Once removed from that.
is old enough that it should be sold over the counter, and the other one has it. It's gonna need a.
Here's the thing.
Top dollar for.
You still need a prescription to get ivermectin.
Yeah, I know.
I understand. Like, yeah, there's the whole over the counter. I agree. It's
so
hydroxychloroquine the same way. But
my stance is, and this is something that actually pisses me off legitimately. Medical drugs are supposed to go off patent after 20 years, and you are not supposed to require a prescription for them unless they are shown to be significantly harmful. And unfortunately, because of our insurance situation, there are a handful of people who have lobbied to keep major drugs covered by insurance so that certain individuals don't have to pay for them. I am very much vehemently opposed to the fact that you have to go see a doctor to go get your birth control. And I am vehemently opposed that people have to go see a doctor to go get ivermectin. This shit should be over the counter, sold in pill form that you know how to use, take 2, call the doctor in the morning. Right? Like, ivermectin is a pretty safe compound.
Absolutely. It's got a huge profile. It's been in use for like a good couple decades in various forms.
Yep.
Well, I mean, ivermectin's been used for 50-odd years plus.
Yep. These kinds of drugs, when they turn around and they said, hey, some people want to use it as a therapeutic, they should have just sat there and slapped the fucking label on it, called it whatever the fuck they want, put it on the shelves in every CVS. That's the way this should have been handled. If you want to take a drug, you are free to take the drug. If you overdose on the drug, that's nobody else's responsibility other than your own.
Right. So that's the thing on this is, and then there's that fucking hospital where they literally didn't have a single patient show up for ivermectin related issues.
Oh yeah, that fucking hoax. Yes, that was such a load of bullshit.
And then Maddow still has the fucking tweet up saying that it happened. Like, the hospital put a statement out. They had to because they got fucking libeled.
Think about how ridiculous their premise is, right? You have to think that somebody went to Tractor Supply, bought the tube of ivermectin with the horse paste on it, right? And I know people are doing that, but this goes back to it should be over the counter. It's not, and you have some pharmacists and medically appointed doctors saying they're not willing to give patients the drug that they want to take that's got a good safety profile, and again, should be available over the counter because it's 20 cents a pill? It's super fucking cheap. If you my energy drinks cost me more money than ivermectin.
So I looked up online because the same way I look at the masks on eBay. I looked up online some of the alternate drug sources people have been pushing around. The cost 95 cents for a 10-pack of 10 packs from India. 95 cents for a box of 100 pills.
It's fucking cheap as shit. It's fucking cheap as shit. But
wow, right?
Going back to the horse paste story, right? Going back to this, we have to pause for a moment, and this is the same thing that I saw in 2016 when they were sitting there and being like, Donald Trump has called for the assassination of Hillary Clinton and all the other stupid fucking shit. Right? The bottom line is, imagine a world that CNN lives in, where somebody went out to Tractor Supply, bought all the ivermectin, and started guzzling a toothpaste tube of horse paste. I'm not saying that there aren't people who won't have overdosed on it, right?
There's certainly some that did.
There are certainly some that did, but we also have to keep in mind that ivermectin does not just come in paste form. It also comes in shot form. And most of the time that you have ivermectin overdoses, it's because you have workers who are working around this shit all day long, dealing with horses and cattle and all the other, shit on a farm. They're doing a massive round of shots to a lot of animals, and they tend to sit there and get some accidental exposure to the injectable form, not the horse paste form. And
keep in mind, these are air injectors.
We have to assume that these people are literally taking a tube of toothpaste ointment with a giant horse on the box and guzzling it. I'm not saying
to bring that full circle here.
But that's extremely stupid.
So here's the part that brings that full circle and makes it even funnier. Just in the absurd sense. So Joe Rogan's talking about suing CNN. What CNN is ignoring in their story, even though they've had to say it basically to cover the facts in such a way that they, especially now that Joe Rogan's back on air after a few days of downtime.
Yep.
Oh yeah, healthy as a
Rogan,
horse.
Joe Rogan,
Healthy as a horse.
he got better. So everybody who's
Yep.
reading the CNN story
Yep.
and pulling their hair out about Joe Rogan eating horse paste sees Joe Rogan better on air,
They are
and they've got to
seething.
be wondering,
Well, this is
what if I can go get that horse paste and get better?
this is
If anybody's spreading out the idea that you should go get horse paste from the tractor store, it's CNN among the liberal retards who went out to the gun stores in force last summer and figured out that they can't point the gun directly at the salesman.
Yep.
Like, it's the
Well,
same
yeah.
yuppie retards that are going to go out there and get the horse paste at this point.
It's the same shit as the hydroxychloroquine stuff, where
Yeah.
I'm going to sit here and I'm going to offer my opinion. I've read the studies on hydroxychloroquine. I have read the studies on ivermectin. I've heard fluvoxamine is something that I should look into. I have not convinced by any of these studies. There is a lot of promise, but the effects from what I've been seeing in many of them are marginal. And you can turn around and you can say that these studies were borked. And we talk all the time on this show about how people intentionally bork studies or intentionally make studies successful. So you have to be very careful. And we talked about the hydroxychloroquine, the positive hydroxychloroquine RCT, but the statement that I made was it's a very small number of cases, right? And I hold all of those caveats true. But
Now, you reminded me that there's several studies that should have been ending at the end of last month. So hopefully we'll have more publications
on
like drug trials. Combination hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc.
Oh, the Zelenko protocol.
That should have,
or not that one, but something similar.
So those studies,
that'll be interesting.
There were several of them. One of them used different macrolide than azithromycin as a second option. But there are several studies that should have ended last month. I think that they should be published by the end of the year. I'm not sure. They should definitely be larger studies.
I'm assuming so, but I will say that I know a lot of people who are prescribed hydroxychloroquine and they got better. And it's not like, and again, I haven't seen the studies.
I've got some anecdotal evidence of that myself. Not personally, but from somebody I know that was consistently on it and was surrounded by sick people, got sick for a little while, and then was better.
And that's what I have heard consistently. As much as I'm sitting here saying that I've heard, I'm skeptical of the ivermectin studies, I'm skeptical of hydroxychloroquine, I am not a true believer. I also have a ton of anecdotal evidence where basically they prescribe this shit and people get better in 2 days, right? They come from, hey, I'm really, really sick to, yeah, I can go back to work today.
Yeah.
In 2 days.
And
2 or 3 days.
Keep in mind, like, we're passing around that we have shared anecdotes here, but the full knowledge assumption on our end, just for the listeners, is that anecdotal evidence is bunk. It's worthless.
That's true. Yeah.
And this is why we talk about the RCTs and so on, where we go on and on about still needing studies, even though we have all this evidence around us.
We
still not good evidence.
Over what the studies actually tested and all the other shit that we fight over on this show. Right? The bottom line is that when CNN sits there and publicizes and hypes the ivermectin stuff like they did when MSNBC does this, and it falls flat and you get somebody like Joe Rogan coming out, they have just basically outed themselves as false information sources, which is, good long term. But if you actually were really concerned, if you had a legitimate concern associated with ivermectin, the whole entire horse paste hospital thing, followed by Joe Rogan and calling him, saying he's on horse dewormer when he has more people listening to him than CNN has viewers.
He was prescribed medication by a doctor, and CNN was taking horse dewormer.
That shit will sit there. That is going to ring true. Like, that's going to force people into cognitive dissonance, because Joe Rogan
can only hope.
Well, more than what they're in currently.
Conservative commentator. He's pretty close to progressive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of these people are going to have to deal with CNN and
Oh,
MSNBC.
Spotify's got to be upset with him today too.
What's that?
But Spotify's got to be upset with him today too,
Oh yeah.
pushing
I
out that
doubt
he
it.
might sue CNN like that.
I've heard that
I
Spotify's been talking behind the curtains about getting rid of him, but I mean, they've got so much money in that it would be.
Oh man,
It's
that
probably
would be
just
such a
bullshit.
bad move.
Oh,
It's
a
such a bad
fool's
move.
move. A fool's fool.
I mean, there's always going to be grumbles, right?
Yeah.
But again, we talked about when I hopped on here. We talked about camps and how there's some scary fucking shit going down, right? But again, I am very hopeful because in order for that shit to escalate, you need the rank and file citizenry to get behind it. And so far, whether it's
Yeah.
camps or this bullshit with ivermectin and hydroxy, like the fact that ivermectin is sold out at Tractor Supply is a big indicator
Yeah, that
of
should tell you something.
how much of a failure their communication strategy is right now.
I mean, let's
And
also
again,
consider that, like, again, we also have, we talk about the mainstreaming of bad ideas, for lack of better phrasing. I mean, we still have, like, so to the limit that celebrities are relevant, you still have, like I said, without a hint of fucking self-awareness, people like George Takei recommending concentration camps.
Yeah,
Like, it's
like quite literally.
it's obscene and like,
Well, it's obscene on a
it's not
number of
good
levels
direction.
because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he in one of the internment camps as a child?
he was
Yeah,
indeed.
he was like,
I
and
thought
this was
so.
pointed out to him ad nauseum.
Good
But not,
God,
as if
what an astounding piece of work.
and then the person
Well, I
talking
mean,
about the concentration camps today, of course, today being the second day of Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year. So Happy New Year, guys.
Shalom.
Good enough.
Okay.
I'll take what I can get.
I believe Evan, this is where they pull out the bris ceremonies and just take a little bit off the top.
I'm only offering
you're
my goodwill
honorary
here.
Jew now.
Every year,
It's okay.
every
He
year
takes.
it gets a little bit smaller.
It's okay, Steve. He takes a different kind of scalp.
I almost had something. I wanted to throw a howl in there, but it's like I couldn't figure out a way to make it work. So it is what it is.
Well,
How Hebrew Hammer.
There you go. Yeah, see, missed opportunities.
a few weeks ago we were talking about how Australia is celebrating Jewish Santa Claus with their camps, and now we're into Jewish
Then
New Year.
yesterday or today you were telling me about my grandfather and a smokestack.
That's right.
Oh, the difference.
Yeah, I was gonna point out how that doesn't really fucking work, because in order for me to be here, he would have had to not go with the smokestack. But
Well,
be that as it may.
Either
You
way,
could have said the grandfather that never was. That would have made a little more sense.
Nick like a chimney. But yeah, I am very, very hopeful because I am seeing a lot of I'm starting to see a change in my feed, and it shows that people are deprogramming a little bit.
Yeah, a number of people are noticing.
Yeah, I mean, Craig, I think, is the only one who brings the glorious artards into my feed, who are sitting there and saying stupid shit. Like, there are people that were sitting there, a month ago and saying, all of you assholes, why aren't you getting the shot? And it's now, hey, what is it? What's the reason that you aren't getting the shot? It's like more of a questioning attitude. I've seen that move. And I've seen a lot of the, these people deserve to be locked up. They're spreading COVID as the plague is going away. And even CNN is starting to report, they're the people who got the vaccines are in fact going into the hospitals. They're getting hospitalized at the same rate or larger
the unvaccinated are, and
Well, you
that's
see, you hope that like at some point here, the most important thing that they need to do is start coming at this with genuine compassion, and that they shut up and just listen to the people that they're so ready to morally castigate
well,
and
I think
discard.
I think that's coming, right? So first off, you know,
A little resolution would be
here's
good.
here's a thank you to the healthcare workers who are choosing to leave their job rather than get the shot, right? And I'm not saying that again, I want to be very clear. I'm not promoting not getting the vaccine. If you believe that it is good for you, go ahead and take it. That being said, if you are going to sit there and take such a moral stance that you are willing to walk off your job to prevent a vaccine mandate from going into effect, power to you. Because there's enough people doing that like police forces are concerned, healthcare workers are concerned, and there's already shortages because of the mask mandates and everything else, because it's making people's jobs difficult to do. So power to everybody who's sitting there and quitting. And that's I am, as much as I think that everything is going tits up, at the same time, the last few weeks I have been very pleased to see a lot of the authoritarianism is kind of on the run. And I think a lot of it kind of broke with the whole Afghanistan thing. I also think a lot of it has broken with Pfizer doing their 2 pills a day and the constant bad news on the vaccines. Um, you know, I, I would still like to see some more stuff, but that's what I think is making a dent in the.
Yeah. So I'll take that as my moment of zen here as I'm 15 minutes over, and bow out and give you a chance to chime in as you please.
Fair enough,
Oh
sir.
no,
Well, you have a nice evening then.
I need to try to get to bed earlier. I would have been on,
well,
but then I realized my phone was out of power, and I didn't know where my charger was.
I saw about the dog. That sucks. I've been there.
Well, the problem is that whenever my dog is uncomfortable, he makes it his mission to inform us that he's uncomfortable. So if he has a sore throat in the middle of the night, he's going to tell us explicitly that he has a sore throat in the middle of the fucking night.
When I was much younger, I had a dog that we had 2 dogs, and they both slept in my room for whatever reason. The female yellow lab slept under the bed, and the male chocolate lab would sleep up in the bed with me. Usually he'd hang out by my feet, or he'd kind of crawl up and lay along the side of me. But if he ever had like a bad, like if he was ever sick or had had a cough or any of that fun stuff, it was immediately obvious to me, and it was not going away.
Well, so luckily, and maybe this is due to the vaccines, or maybe that he has, because my dog is fully immunized.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's just a mild case. It only seems to happen when he gets excited. So if my wife starts pissing me off, I start playing with the dog, because then he gets panting and excited. He's coughing. And then
That's
my wife
cruel.
will get him all excited again. Well, she shouldn't tell me what to do. And she should have learned after 15, 16 years of marriage not to tell me what the fuck to do, because I'm going to literally do what the opposite of what she says, especially if it doesn't harm me in any way. And in the case of the dog, all he's going to do is cough for a little bit, and he's going to calm down and relax and go play with his ball. It's really not that severe for him. He seemed a little bit lethargic today. I'm upstairs in my bedroom now. That was when I finally found the charger. And so he's up here with me, and that's kind of early for him to come up. And my wife's not up here, so that's like doubly special for him to come up. So he's clearly probably not feeling that great today, but it's not terrible. But last night it was all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. and he starts whining. And you're like, okay, I know what you're whining about, and there's nothing I can fucking do about it. So you're just going to have to suffer like the rest of the humans and dogs in the world that get the sniffles. He just doesn't, he doesn't have any frame of reference of pain or misery, because we keep him in a pretty good health. And
he's a dog in an American home.
Yeah, he's a well taken care of pooch.
He is a well taken care of pooch. It's kind of like, all of these liberals and their first world problems.
You don't say.
No real perspective on the world outside.
All right. Well,
Funny
good
enough.
talk, gentlemen.
Indeed.
It was a good talk. I am so sorry. I wish I had charge, but it was crazy today. So
Ah, no worries, man. It happens.
it is. I will hopefully. So I think this weekend I got fishing, and then next week will be crazy. But sometime in the next 3 or 4 weeks, things are going to calm down, and I'm actually going to be able to sleep in on the weekends, and you know, enjoy
Yeah.
myself, and actually get to like clearing the giant pile of crap off my desk and putting my computer together, and working inside a little bit more.
All right.
But my wife was determined this year, so I've been going pretty much nonstop since July. And every single night when we do this thing at 10 o'clock, I'm freaking exhausted, which has never happened. So either I'm getting old, or sleeping for 4 hours a night eventually catches up to you.
It does, actually.
It does seem to be that way. If I could guarantee 6 every night, that would be fine. But then you have the dog or the cats getting sick or crying in the middle of the night, and I'm a light sleeper. So it's just between everything, no catching up. I'm tired and I don't want to move. So I apologize. But soon I shall be here, and I can make Craig's loins frothy with the prospects.
Good luck. I don't really know how to
Fruit Loop?
parse that one, but yeah. Okay.
It's okay. You don't need to parse that thing.
Okay, good. I'll
We
just
can
avoid
all
it then.
pretend it never happened.
Well, Craig, at some point you should send me your address, and I'll send you a Great American Challenge.
For real though, you do need to send us some of that honey.
I do. We actually need to process. We're gonna have to pretty soon start packing in the hives this year, and then gathering that, and then we should really process last year's batch, and
Okay.
jar the stuff from the year before. So, like 2 years behind.
Jeez,
No
dude.
Yeah, no
No
big.
big deal. Well, I work full time. He works full time. Both of us are in master's classes. And then, you got all the other stuff that we try to get done. It's crazy. Trying to live a full adult life. It's wonderful. It's fun. I like all the responsibility and all the sex, but sometimes it's exhausting.
Yeah, well, guess that's life. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I guess I'll let you guys go because you both got to get out of here and get some sleep, and I've got to edit this, and I've got 1 or 2 topics I guess I'm going to just cover real quick as I let you dudes get out of here.
Okay. All right.
So, take it easy.
Have a good night.
That's Craig. Find him at CraigBob99 almost everywhere. And that was Steve, Ratman720. Almost everywhere, but maybe not as worthwhile to try and get a hold of.
Ever.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Although maybe, as he said, there is a slight uptick on the feed. People are getting fed up, and that's good.
Yeah. I am hopeful. I'm hopeful. I'm also hopeful that the administration is starting to turn away from their bonkers policies. They haven't tried to do anything more with the rent moratoriums. They haven't tried to do anything. It doesn't look like anybody's trying to really extend the unemployment benefits. They're tacitly admitting that was a bad idea. So,
Well, small victories. Although I really expect nothing from some of the most evil people ever to have lived and breathed. So we'll have to just kind of watch it play out.
well, we will. I'm looking forward to the jobless claims. And
yeah, Monday was the
everybody-
day. Monday was the day. That's going to be a really interesting one to see as it plays out this week.
Well, we got, what is it? In about 30 to 45 days, we should have a massive number of people that no one wants to rent to on the streets. That'll be fun because, that's what should happen to irresponsible people is they end up on the streets. And now you have a whole bunch of people who I'm pretty sure were expecting Joe Biden to extend the unemployment benefits, who are going to find in short order that the amount of money that they were expecting every week is going to be substantially less than what they were previously receiving.
If
And
any at all,
maybe,
for that matter.
maybe, just maybe, they might actually go find a job.
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, I'm all in favor if these folks are in a position where having left work and had the time to like kind of get out of the rat race, have had the moment to sit there and set themselves up for a simpler life where they can kind of check into their family and their friends. I think that would be a great thing for society as a whole. That being said, I am sure there's a lot of people who use the money to go sit there and pump up stocks and uh, do all kinds of risky behavior and will have nothing to show for the last year of their life.
Yeah, that's a real possibility, and I kind of expect there's a lot of people that have been playing cricket when they should have been playing ant, as it were. Well, that's an
Yep,
old one, isn't it?
it is.
But yeah, that's a good one. Aesop level right there. Those
Mm-hmm.
deep cuts. As you do, as you do. All right, well, I'll let you get out of here, sir. I'm going to go over like one or two quick news topics and
You have fun.
I'll do my best. So, yeah, look him up, Ratman720. Worth your while or not, you gauge. It might not be, so make of that what you will. So let me get up a couple more of the stories here, and I'll wrap things up for the night.
Have a good night, Evan.
And you too, sir. Be well, Craig. Be well, Steves. But specifically, Steve, be well. I wouldn't... Whatever, you know what I'm saying.
Hey, if there are more of me, the only thing that can happen is the world becomes a better place.
At least we'd have more
thank
competent
you.
engineers.
I am very excited to announce
Oh?
I'm not actually doing anything, but in my area, I was talking about being one of the unvaccinated and trying to get a religious exemption, and maybe I should start my own cult. So
All
I've
right.
been looking. I mentioned that I've been looking for properties to rent out and move into some additional income streams. One of the properties that popped up in a search is a church,
You don't
and
say.
I was just like, this may have to be a thing. I
Are
might
you
have to make the
saying
branch
that it's a
Davonian.
sign as if from heaven?
It is a sign as if from heaven, and I will decorate it with statues of myself and pictures of myself.
You are asking to get struck by lightning, brother.
Ah, I think that there is nothing bad with how that would end up. Every single pew would just have a statue of Steve, and that's it. We'd just be the Branch Devonians. Everything,
The Church of Steve.
Church of Steve.
Ah,
Yeah, sigh.
good luck.
Someday. And I just need to get wealthy enough that I can buy a mega church and just preach the word of Steve.
That takes a lot of money. I mean, it took Jim Backer years, and I mean, he got it taken away pretty quick. So I don't know if that's really necessarily the safest goal set you're working with.
I'm just, you got to have that as never invest more than you can lose.
Oh, fair.
And if I
I always be dreaming, I guess.
I'll always be dreaming. A church with nothing but statues of Steve.
Godspeed, sir.
Life goals. Have a good night.
You too, man. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's get the other bits of news here. So, Greg Abbott, as of yesterday, signed Senate Bill 1 into law. That one is pretty interesting. It's nothing to do with this whole abortion thing that I've personally caught all kinds of hell over, just saying, why can't people have the right to choose? And this thing, it's long and short, it ensures the enfranchisement of people of color, minorities, white people, yellow people, brown people, red people, everybody, basically. It's cutting out the cheating, to put it in really simple, short terms. Well, shit, everybody's heard about this. But anyway, yeah, the way I framed it, which is, in my personal opinion, quite delicious, is I just said to all the people out there, I only got one like on this and no engagement because I'm kind of acerbic in these sort of things. But You can't steal a black man's vote the same way ever again in Texas. I know you evil fucks will find a new way to disenfranchise people, but at least a few ways are now blocked to you. And a lot of these arguments come down to framing. I mean, I've got no arguments against that because what are you going to do? If you're on that side of things, you certainly can't say, well, actually, I hate black people. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. More power to you, Johnny Cake a Cayman. And beyond that, you know, we've got a couple of people on watch lists that are now in the government of Afghanistan holding our citizens hostage, literally, for greater means. So much more to go over. New York Times published an Afghani war criminal because, you know, they just kind of hate America. Their interior minister, Haqqani, killed six people, including one American. Went after Karzai. No, you know, all sorts of things. Be on the lookout, of course, for the new Microsoft personalized news feed. It'll be definitely something you want to turn off if you're using Windows 11, because you know as well as I do it's going to be absolute shit. So there's more, and a lot that we didn't really get over, but we got into a lot on vaccines and the way all this shit works. So I hope it's been informative. As I said, you can look up Steve at Ratman720. Most places. You can look me up at that fake guy Dan just about everywhere except Facebook. You can find the podcast, if you're listening to it on YouTube, I guess, through Anchor or any of the main providers if you want to download. And of course, you can find Craig at CraigBob99. And with that, I guess I'm just going to sign off with not really any particularly good news. Oh yeah, no, I do have some good news. Some dude in San Salvador went to McDonald's and asked if he could pay in Bitcoin. This was day and a half ago. And they let him get his big breakfast, which is pretty dope. So yeah, I can actually close with a decent story. Anyway, I'll put a quick link to that here from just the dude that actually did it. So be well, be safe, keep the powder dry and all that good stuff. And well, we'll be back. Give me a follow. Hit me up for any ideas. A link to the Discord, show notes, whatever. Anyway, talk to you soon. Be well and be safe.